Imagine that Earth's rotation stops one day and tomorrow never comes. Life will never be the same. But if you can escape to an underground bunker, you may have a chance to carry on. Normally, our planet makes a rotation every 24 hours at a speed of 1,040 miles per hour. This is faster than the speed of sound and several times faster than the fastest cars in the world. We don't feel it while it's rotating, but we will when the Earth suddenly stops. At the last second, you run into an underground bunker. You close the hatch, go deep underground, and hear the chaos that has begun on the surface. All the people, houses, cars, ships, roads, trees, animals, topsoil, anything not connected to bedrock will fly off to the east. Hurricanes and tsunamis will appear. The endless day brings huge global earthquakes, and volcanoes will awaken and erupt, threatening to destroy everything. Meanwhile, you're drinking tea and waiting in the bunker until the catastrophe ends. 2 days later, you realize that silence has come to the surface. You go upstairs, open the hatch, and water flows inside the bunker. Great, your shelter is flooded. You swim to the surface and find yourself on the middle of the ocean. Fortunately, a big ship passes by with other survivors and they take you on board. You're looking around and realize that the water seems to be almost everywhere on the planet now. Since the global stopping, the water on Earth has united into two oceans, the North and South, and all continents have become one, connected on the equator. You and the survivors sail a very long time under the scorching sun. Then night comes, not because the day has finally ended, but because the ship has arrived at the other half of the Earth. The unbearable heat is replaced by terrible cold. You're finally approaching the equator, and you can see land, but unfortunately, everything is frozen here. On this side of the planet, all nature freezes and night never ends. It'll be very difficult to move around to get food. You need to find the land on the warm half of the planet. Weeks later, you arrive, but find nothing except a desert. The temperature is so high that agriculture can't be created here. You start to worry that there's nowhere for you to go. But there is one area. The border between the hot and cold halves have ideal conditions for living. Places where you can watch the endless sunset or dawn. You arrive here and finally get some rest and sleep. But it turns out now you have some problems with this too. Your sleep biorhythms are damaged because of the long bright day and the long dark night. This affected your psychological and physical development. It takes a while for you to fall asleep. But life is getting better. You build a house, even start farming, but not for long. The temperature drops very fast and it becomes colder and darker outside. This happens because the Earth is slowly spinning around the Sun and the borders are shifting. You build a motorhome and travel around the world, following the space between the hot and cold sides of the planet, with long stops to enjoy sunsets and rises. You hear a strange sound, the sound of storm. A big wave approaches you. Come on, what's happened this time? Well, the Earth's shape has changed. Our planet has become more of a sphere or ball. Before, the Earth's shape was flattened because of the fast rotation. It was wider at the equator and had a slightly flattened circle shape. When the Earth stopped, it became perfectly round. The world's oceans change again. Floods are inevitable. Fortunately, you have a little boat and you sail around the world once more. When you find land, you face another big problem. But this time, it's not from Earth. It's space radiation. The old magnetic field worked thanks to the Earth's rotation. It protected us from the solar winds, ultraviolet radiation, and radiation from the deeps of space. Now it's gone. Without it, existence on the surface of the planet is impossible. Time to go back underground. You're hiding in a new bunker with other survivors. You dig tunnels, build underground cities, and only go to the surface in special protective suits. But there is nothing left. No plants or trees or animal life. You have to grow wheat and plants in the underground city using artificial lights. But things could be even worse if the Earth halted completely. If the Earth stops spinning around the Sun's gravity will pull our planet so quickly that people won't have time to create a huge spacecraft to evacuate. Normally, our planet spinning around the Sun is like riding a fast carousel. You can't get too close to the center because of the high speed. In fact, Billions of years ago, the Earth rotated even faster, and days passed in 14 to 18 hours. But every 100 years, the day length increases by about 2 milliseconds. And what if the Earth rotates backward? Unfortunately, there won't be any time traveling to the past. Continents and oceans would remain in their place, but the weather conditions would greatly change. Using computer simulations, you find that deserts would cover North America and replace the Amazon rainforest. Western Europe will be much colder. Central Africa will be overgrown with lush forests and green fields. Dense trees, rivers, and lakes would appear in the Sahara Desert. You wish you could live in a place with a very long day, without catastrophes, where the sun is always warm, the flowers are blooming, and people are happy. Well, there were such places like this on old Earth, close to the North Pole: Finland, Sweden, Norway, Canada. These long sunny days are the result of the tilt of Earth's axis. Up at the top, the North Pole just can't hide from the light. The shortest polar day lasts almost 2 days, and the longest is about 6 months. However, a place where the sun always shines exists nowhere on Earth. Sooner or later, night will come. Before the Earth stopped rotating, you could visit the northern parts of these countries and enjoy one day lasting spring to autumn. But it wasn't all that easy. Tourists suffered from insomnia. You'd fall asleep, wake up, and spend all your time while the sun continued to shine. Just like you have become used to your life underground, the locals were used to this life too. They didn't follow a certain sleep schedule and fell asleep when they felt the need. The endless sun saturated people with vitamin D and provided a lot of energy and productivity. But a long night followed after the long day. The lack of sun can cause depression. But people of the North fought it with the help of skis, baths, and a fabulous atmosphere on the streets. Cafes, houses, parks were decorated with bells and lights, so you felt like you were in a winter fairy tale and didn't have a bad mood. Maybe, if the Earth starts to rotate again, you can visit them in the future. Humanity will once again visit the Moon. The mission is planned for 2024. In this crew, we'll see the first women step on the Moon. The main goal is to establish a lunar base for continued research that will help NASA prepare for an upcoming mission to Mars. Has been planning a crewed flight to the Red Planet set for the 2030s. Robotic rovers did a good job exploring the Martian surface, but astronauts will have to dig deeper to find evidence of water and any fossils proving microscopic life was once possible on our planetary neighbor. New data on Earth-like planets. Since its launch in 2009, the Kepler Space Telescope has discovered lots of exoplanets orbiting distant stars. Some of them have an Earth-like mass, composition, and orbits. NASA plans to launch a new generation of telescopes in the 2040s. They'll help us find real twins of our planet and even get pictures of their surfaces. The return of Halley's Comet. It'll be another 41 years before we once again see the most famous comet in the sky. Halley's visits us every 75 years, so some will manage to see it twice in their lifetime. The longest solar eclipse. 166 years from now, I'll still be around then, the sun will go dark for 7 minutes and 29 seconds. This is pretty close to the predicted maximum. It'll also be the longest eclipse human civilization has ever witnessed in its 10,000 years. Arrival of the most notorious asteroid. 1950 DA was once the most probable candidate among near-Earth objects we know to actually strike the planet. Fortunately, the chance was later estimated to be not even 0.1%. It'll most likely pass by on March 16, 2880. Mark your calendars. And it'll become solid evidence that we're safe for a while. The asteroid is more than a mile in diameter, enough to take out life on a planet. A new North Star? The Earth spins like a top. Watch one of these toys closely, and you'll see how its tip starts to draw circles in the air. The Earth's axis, an imaginary line going through the poles, goes full circle once every 26,000 years. It points at different stars along the way, thus changing the North Star. By the year 3000, the Gamma Cephei star will share this title with Polaris, as the Earth's axis will point right between them. The first near-Earth supernova. Antares is the 15th brightest star in the night skies. It's also an old red supergiant 12 times larger than the Sun. Stars this massive age to a point where they collapse in on themselves, producing huge supernovas. For Antares, this will happen just 10,000 years from now, which is nothing for a 12-million-year-old star. The resulting burst will be too far away to affect life on this planet negatively, but the light show will be visible here on Earth even during the day. Message to the universe. Delivered. Arecibo is the encoded message describing humanity, life on Earth, and the advancement of our scientific knowledge. It was broadcast from the Arecibo radio telescope and aimed at the center of the M13 cluster 25,000 light-years away from us. In 25,000 years, it'll finally reach its destination. A new closest star. About 36,000 years from now, the Ross 248 star will become our new closest neighbor. It'll be just 3 light-years away from us and overtake the title from Proxima Centauri, which is a bit more than 4 light-years away. Ross 248 will remain the nearest star for around 9,000 years and then move away once again. So, you didn't like the neighborhood or what? The first interstellar human-made object. In 40,000 years, Voyager 1 will reach a point within 1.5 light-years of the Gliese 445 star. It successfully reached interstellar space in 2013. But, unfortunately, it won't be able to power up any of its systems somewhere beyond the year 2025. Voyager 1 has a message too, a recording of greetings in 55 languages, music from classical to rock and roll, and sounds of the Earth's wildlife. A bare Saturn. 100,000 years from now, Saturn will lose its beautiful rings. It'll happen gradually over time as the planet's colossal gravity pulls rocks and ice from this belt floating around it. They'll all eventually fall and get crushed and burned by Saturn's atmosphere. Well, how rude. The ring system is in the middle of its life cycle, so we're incredibly lucky we got to see it in its full glory. The most frightening supernova. The WR-104 star will burst into a supernova in 3,000 years. This star is 75,000 light-years away from us, and the blast won't touch us at all. But there is a small chance it'll also produce a gamma-ray burst in the process. If this stream of energy happens to aim right at us, it will negatively affect life on Earth. Good news? Scientists say that's very unlikely. Colliding moons. The moons of Uranus are part of a highly unstable system. Some of them have orbits that cross paths. Uranus already has 2 rings of debris from past collisions of its natural satellites. Desdemona and Cressida will crash into each other in the next million years and produce new rings. A star too close for comfort. The rogue Gliese 710 star is approaching our solar system, and it will get just 1 light-year away in 1.3 million years. This won't have a major impact on the planets, but it could disturb the so-called Oort cloud, which surrounds our solar system and is full of comets. From Earth, the star will look like the brightest planets we see now, and we'll see many more comets in the skies. The closest star to ever go supernova. Within a few million years, the Spica star, which is only 240 light-years from us, will burst into a supernova. Supernovae are a problem for life when they're 3 times closer than that, but the supernova itself will shine in the Earth's skies as bright as a full moon. A time capsule for future generations. The Lagios 1 satellite was launched back in 1976 to gather information about the exact shape of the Earth and tectonic plate movement. But it also contained information about civilization on Earth at the time. It'll re-enter our atmosphere in 8.4 million years. If humanity is around then, they'll learn how life on Earth was in our time. Well, at least how it was some 40 years ago. Rings for Mars. Mars' moon, Phobos, orbits really close to the surface. and it continues to get 2 feet closer every century. 50 million years from now, it'll collide with Mars, resulting in a massive amount of debris going into orbit and forming a ring system around the red planet. Oh, can't wait for that. Days on Earth will get longer. No, really? 1.4 billion years ago, the Moon was much closer to our planet. It made the Earth rotate faster, so the day was only 18 hours. The Moon is continuously moving away from Earth. In 180 million years, we'll gain 1 extra hour. In a little over 2 billion years, a day on Earth will be 36 hours long. No more solar eclipses. 600 million years into the future, the Moon will move away from the Earth too far to cover the Sun during eclipses. Those will become ancient relics. The Sun will get too bright. It'll take about 1 billion years for the Sun to raise its luminosity by 10%. This will be devastating for planets in the solar system, and life on Earth won't be possible beyond this point. By then, our species will likely have found a new planetary home. The Sun will swallow the inner planets. In 5 billion years, the Sun will begin to evolve into a red giant, growing hundreds of times its current size. It'll swell up so much, it will eventually engulf Mercury, Venus, and possibly Earth. The new Goldilocks habitable zone may shift to the orbits of Jupiter and Saturn. This process will take a bit under 3 billion years until the Sun reaches its maximum size. After that, our star will shrink into a white dwarf. The most epic event ever. Around the same time our Sun is swelled up, the nearest neighboring galaxy, Andromeda, will come too close to the Milky Way. If we could watch our galactic neighbor at this time, it'll get larger and larger as it approaches. Then, the two galaxies will start to merge. Bright blue stars will burst into life. New constellations will form. The two spiral galaxies will now be a single giant elliptical one. Wow, I've set an alarm on my smartphone so I don't miss it. Hey, another incredible story happened to me recently. Yeah, I'm just a lucky guy, I guess. It was Saturday, and my grandpa asked me to help him clean the garage. I thought it would be a pretty dull day. If only I knew what was coming for me. I was sorting boxes and came across a calculator. I wanted to check if it was still working, so I gave it new batteries, pressed on, and everything disappeared. It was so dark that I couldn't see anything around me. I had a slight feeling of being pushed somewhere. A moment later, I could see again. I wasn't in the garage anymore, but standing in the middle of a narrow street. What had happened? How had it happened? It couldn't have been the old calculator, but what else was there to blame? Was it even a calculator? Walking around me were people dressed in kilt-like skirts and sandals. I looked around and, far away, I spotted a pyramid. Was it a pyramid of Giza? Did that mean I was in Egypt? Wow! It seemed like the calculator was some sort of teleportation machine. But then another thought struck me. What if there was only one pyramid? There should have been 3. The first one was built by Pharaoh Khufu in 2550 BC. The second one, with the Sphinx monument, was built 30 years later by his son, Pharaoh Khafre. The third one, the smallest, was built 30 years after that by Pharaoh Menkaure. But here, I could clearly see there was only one pyramid. This meant that the calculator didn't just teleport me through space, but through time too. It was a time machine, and I was somewhere around 2550 BC when only one of Giza's Great Pyramids had been built. So, I was in ancient Egypt. It was hard to believe, but it was pointless to try to deny because I could see it with my own eyes. I even pinched myself, but it wasn't a dream. It seemed like nobody could see me. I walked down the street, and it felt fantastic to be here. Did you know the Egyptians were likely the first people to calculate that a day lasts 24 hours and created a 365-day calendar? They combined mathematics and astronomy to figure this out around 4000 BC. Originally, the 12 months of their solar calendar each had 30 days, but later they added several extra days. Around me, the surroundings started to fade, and then I was in the darkness again. When I could finally see once more, I found myself in the middle of a street again, but this time it was totally different. It was easy to tell I was in the future. Green areas were on the roof of every building. Cows were grazing up there. Trees and greenery stretched between roads. To use the space better, there were roads above me too, on many levels connecting everything together. As I was gazing around, trying to find a flying car, someone called out to me. "Hey, hello!" A young man was staring right at me. "You look really weird. Where do you come from?" America? I don't think they still wear that clothing there. I mean, what time do you come from? You're a time traveler, right?" I was surprised. Was time traveling so typical here? I said I was from 2020 and got a "Wow, you're really old" in return. Sweet. We walked for a while, and here's what I learned from the guy. First, he could see me when no one else in the past could, because the past was historically preserved, and we couldn't be participants, so we wouldn't change anything. Turned out, I was in Indonesia in the year 2176. To my surprise, the guy was 45 years old, but he didn't look a year over 25. On average, people now lived 120 years and were aging way slower due to progressive health improvements in technology. Underwater, there was a whole system of high-speed train lines. People could travel from Indonesia to North America in just 1 hour. An average 22nd century citizen had been everywhere on the planet, but tourism still existed. Only it was space tourism. People were taking trips to Mars, the Moon, and to a couple of space stations. 1 billion people lived on Mars already. Still, Earth's population was continually growing, and people were now moving underwater. There were already 3 big cities down there, and another one was under construction. I had so many questions, but suddenly I was gone again. That darkness and the feeling of being pushed had returned. This time, the first thing I felt was cold. When I could see again, it was dark around me, and I was in water. I only had a maximum of 1 hour before my body temperature dropped and hypothermia would set in. I was hoping this trip wouldn't take me long, and the time machine would drag me somewhere else in a few minutes. Still, I couldn't take any chances. I had to figure out how to get out of the water. I looked around for any nearby land, but it was hard to see. Then, I noticed the lights. Several hundred feet away, a huge ship was approaching. Hopefully, I was in the future again. That way, I'd be visible to the people on board and had a chance to be saved. But then, I noticed something that destroyed all my hopes. The ship was heading for a dark object in the water, an iceberg. The ship was the Titanic. I knew exactly where I was, the Atlantic Ocean, April 14, 1912, at about 11:40 p.m. I was about to witness the sinking of the Titanic. My heart skipped a beat, and I even forgot I was in the water as I stared at the ship quickly approaching the iceberg. I wanted to do something to change history, but I couldn't do anything. 1, 2, 3. On the count of 37, I heard a cracking sound. The impact. History was about to happen. The ship kept moving forward, but I knew it wouldn't reach its destination. Everything around me went blurry. With a heavy heart, I was traveling to a new place. I ended up on land once more. It was midday and it was hot, which was pretty fortunate because I was cold and wet. I was somewhere that looked like a tropical forest. But there were no clues as to what age I was in, or even which continent. I decided to explore and headed out. Pretty soon, I had an answer when I came across a dinosaur. It was the height of me, but about 20 feet long. A Dilophosaurus. Thankfully, it couldn't see me. I didn't feel safe and wanted to run away and hide, but I stayed because, even in 2020, you didn't meet a dinosaur every day. I tried to follow him, but he was too fast for me to keep up. But the good news was, I now knew where I'd ended up. Dilophosaurus lived in the early Jurassic period, around 193 million years ago. Specifically, I was in North America, but it wasn't where you might imagine it to be. At that time, our world looked different. Instead of 7 continents on Earth, there was only one. The supercontinent Pangaea stretched from pole to pole. So, I was standing in North America. Eurasia was up in the northeast. Beneath North America was South America. To the right of that was Africa. Beneath that, there was Antarctica, Australia, and India. Yep, India was that far away from Eurasia before it traveled to where it would be in 2020. Imagine, if the continents hadn't drifted apart, India would be a pretty cold country. So, I was on Pangaea. But the process of the continents breaking apart had already started. North America was shifting away from the rest of the continent, moving 1 inch a year. Still, it would take millions of years more to drift where it was in 2020. And even back in the 21st century, it was always moving. I kept wandering the forest, and I should admit, it was pretty creepy. It was filled with many odd animals, like massive flying insects, lizards 4 feet long, and all different kinds of dinosaurs. I couldn't remember the names of them all. I was studying a bizarre creature when one of the giant insects flew right through my head. Everything went dark, and I was gone again. I opened my eyes and found myself in the garage, the calculator's battery depleted. My grandpa walked in and asked how it was going. I showed him the calculator and asked what it was. "A calculator," he replied. "That's it? Just a calculator? It doesn't take you to places?" "That's it. It just calculates." But I knew my trips happened for real, and I suspected my grandpa knew the calculator's secret too.